Well, thank you for coming. We go from almost to a semi-private class, so I want to encourage you to be as interactive, ask questions. I don't mind at all if you interrupt me. I don't have the speaker, oh, can't do anything situation, because this is your time, right? And glad you have extra time. I paid a lot of money to not get Laura's visa approved, so it's really paying off for me here. So what I prepared, so that is something to do, is something about what I call do your homework, which I think you need to be doing if you haven't done it yet. And if you've done it yet, I would love to hear how you did that and how that's working for you, and we'll talk about that. I'll talk about the new technologies, as Esther has mentioned, and then how can you chart your strategy for your enterprise to be successful from that perspective. But we can talk whatever you want. I would like to make it as interactive as I can, so it's really your questions, whatever you want to answer, whatever you want to say. Cool. So do your homework, right? Very simple thing. I don't know if you've been here 3 years ago. I talked about it. I talked more about the homework. But this was the slide I showed you yesterday in the keynote, right? The most important slide for you to take away, which explains more or less everything. And let me walk you through it, because we have this great interactive thing. So there was always this compromise between what technology can do and what business wants to do, right? Think about a UI, right? It's not intuitive like a book or something to read, right? You have to learn it, there has to be training. It's a compromise, right? It's the best thing you can fit on the screen. It's always a compromise. And the modus operandi was you show the business, the technology professional how you want to do business, and he will do the best compromise, hopefully, for that. Yeah? The super interesting thing is that this was like how it was meant to be. There was no foreseeable change. The interesting thing is that somewhere between, in the last decade, things took over here where technology could do more than what business practices demand. I'll give you an example which we take for granted, right? It's what I call infinite connectivity, right? No matter where you are in the world today, you expect you can do a Zoom, a Teams, a Google Meet call, right? Including video. The business best practice demand for video was go to a room with a setup with a $30,000 expensive Panasonic or Cisco calling equipment, and you would book that room and go there. That was how it was supposed to be, right? All of a sudden, telecom communications companies put so much fiber in there, the internet boomed, we have infinite connectivity. We take it for granted, right? The next level up here is infinite insights, right? And that's something where enterprise already struggle with. And the innovation behind that is something which came out of advertising, which was invented at Yahoo, which is almost defunct right now, right? But Yahoo had this problem, more interesting thing, I need to sell advertising. So if, I just remember your company, if Silicon Valley Bank calls and wants to do advertisement for Southern India to IT or investors who Googled HR technology, right? There is no structured way for Yahoo to find a fair price to you, right? Because they want to find a fair price to you, because if they overcharge, you're not going to go back to them. You didn't get any leads from that. If you undercharge, Yahoo loses money, right? Now replace Yahoo with Google, with Facebook, with Microsoft, with Amazon, who are all the big advertising companies today, right? So what they invented at Yahoo, so kudos to them, is this elephant technology. I call it jokingly, it's called Hadoop. Who knows where the name Hadoop is from? Sounds Indian enough, right? It's an elephant symbol. It was the name of the toy of the main guy who invented Hadoop. And Hadoop changed the game in the sense that for the first time, companies like you can store everything that is digital. Your digital artifacts, which you're storing anyway, your systems of record, when did you hire someone, how much do you pay someone, that was clear, that was digital already, right? You would store that, that was what happened in this phase. But all of a sudden also your digital exhaust, right? All documents, all clickstream, when did you show up? All of that could be stored at an affordable price, because that's what Yahoo and then Google paved the way for. And now comes the big thing, the kicker. Without knowing which questions to ask. Let's go back to the Silicon Valley Bank example, right? Nobody would know when, give me one of your names. Sorum? Sorum. When Sorum would call and pick up the phone, there's no way for Google, Facebook to know what he's going to ask for. It's going to say Northern, Southern India. It's going to say, I want to have investors. I want to have IT people. I want to have HR people. So it's completely unstructured. So the Hadoop cluster of data, which would be at Yahoo, Google, Facebook, or is at Yahoo, Google, and Facebook, would allow the query, which would take a long time for what we would say in HR. We don't want to wait 30 seconds, 45 seconds. But think about it. The question was not defined. So for the first time, infinite storing of everything that you wanted to store, and the ability to ask any question. That's infinite insights. That's the second level of infinite computing. And that is what happened early here for tech companies, and that's something which needs to happen for enterprises. And still in your homework list, you see that in a moment. Yeah. So for whatever reason this is overtaken, this is where we talked about the Airbnbs, the Ubers, and so on. You remember that time? Now it's all about digital business models which are done here, and the opportunity for enterprise to use this gap, close this gap, be successful in their markets, disrupt their competition, and that's what's really interesting, right? For HR, make it a more work-livable place. Yeah? Delight your employees with great technology so they think this is a company which cares for me. This is a company which empowers me. Right? This is a company I want to. This is a company I'm looking up to, right? Because they help me doing my work, being successful as a professional. Any questions on this slide? No? Shy? Yeah, so please.
Could you talk a little bit about the opportunity for the HR folks on the
Great question. We'll definitely get to it. The opportunity for the HR folks is that you should not work anymore with old-style technology which puts everything only in a relational database. Yeah, please.
With respect to this era from 2010 to 2020 and 22 then
Yeah.
25. So in 20 to 25, we can see that a dip in the say human practices and so on.
Yeah, so
And technology is say growing day and night, right?
Right.
So being an HR, so there are two sort of industries. One, service industry, which is already equipped with so many technology because of the nature of the business that they are.
Right.
They do B2C sort of thing. But the manufacturing industry, which are not in B2C, they are B2B.
Of course,
So
yeah.
when B2B, there are the people at the shop floor or who are running machines
Right.
24/7. So their IQ and the kind of environment they are coming from, they are not very tech savvy.
Yep.
And as an human resource partner, we also need to take care of them.
Absolutely.
And also we need to bridge the gap between the technology and the human.
Yep.
So what and how, being an HR, we can play this crucial role and we can bring them all together with us. Because say, it is a mindset since from past, say, 25 to 30 years, they are doing the same things in the same manner.
Right.
Doing things manually is now at a very saturation point, at a very saturation or the maturity level. So how we can bring them to the table, and so that they can also enjoy the leverage of technology.
Right. That's a great question, right? So
And this is this is the very pain area for almost everyone who are in the say automotive sector and who are who are already in the manufacturing,
Right.
which deals in the B2B, not B2C.
Right. Yeah, so it's a general, we live in a world, and in the US you say there's white collar and blue collar, right? So to paraphrase that a little more. And it's a huge challenge because people are under-automated, under-technologies from an employee perspective. It's getting gradually better because, right, the thing which we haven't mentioned is the whole smartphone revolution, right? I was very impressed. I didn't have a chance to be in India for over 2 years. When I was leaving Goa, somebody just paid with a barcode, so I learned all about UPI as an example, right? So the technology comes to more people are getting computer literate. You know, there was a big step before of saying, if I do onboarding on a computer in the first world, right, if people have no computer, what can we do, right? And then the statement in the US was, oh, you go to library where there's public computers, right? But so gradually that has disappeared for the first world. I'm not an expert for India to know where the literacy is there. But one thing to think about, right? We all remember Uber, right? Uber gave their riders with no commitment how much they would ride. You would just sign up for Uber. You would get a clamped down iPhone. But you couldn't use it as an iPhone, but you could run the Uber app. Yeah? So the thinking has to be, from your perspective, if you have under technology users, and it's always a question of the price point, right? Why would Uber give a gig worker with no commitment of doing 40, 50 weeks or so and so many rides a clamped down iPhone in 2010, 2011? What would you give an employee, blue-collar employee, right, to make it easier for them to check in their times, to check on their shifts, to get certified, whatever the big things you want to automate in automotive, typically. Yeah. So look at the price point of technology becoming more affordable. Right? Don't think in the old ways of saying it has to be that and that platforms. And platforms are becoming more affordable. Right? I mean, smartphone penetration in India is 60% something. It's one of the highest in Asia. Yeah. So it's quickly changing that all your factory workers have something or someone who can help them. Right? You might have a 50, 60-year-old doing important work and he's not technology literate, but you might have someone to help him or help her. Yeah. But it's a big challenge, no question. So this, what did I do? I clicked extend. So this is my speculation, right? The opportunity phase is right now, right? For you to get a seamless, better work scheduling in blue-collar manufacturing and automotive, you are the expert to know when it's affordable and can be done. If you're the first in your industry, great advantage, right? I think that business best practice are going to create, so this is my speculation that this gap will narrow again. We'll talk about it in 10 years, yeah? Other questions on this slide? Please.
Not a question, but just a story I remember related to the conversation right now. So I was working with Ola, which is an alternative to Uber. And when we started educating the driver community, which is a blue-collar community, on how to use the app, kind of do their business through that. So the idea was for us, one of the drivers asked me, he said, you've given me this phone, you've told me how to operate this app. Would I be able to go to YouTube, watch movies?
Of course.
So I told him no,
Yeah.
because that's how it was designed at the early stage. And while we were trying to just get his car in order, in about a minute time, he came back to me and he said that, I've broken your code, I've already got access to other internet stuff. So the perspective here is that when you say opportunity, I totally agree with that, because just the awareness and how people are now using technology, even at a blue-collar level, is risen significantly over the years. So just wanted to call out that story.
No, absolutely right. And I give you, find me, I'll send you a courtesy copy of a case study I recently wrote of a German cleaning company. They do cleaning services, janitorial services. They're a very blue-collar workforce as well. And their HR system was paper-based, completely paper-based, because again, people are not literate, don't have computers, don't have PCs. So any change, paycheck, everything kept in paper and forms. Right? They built, and it was not affordable for them to go to any of the HR vendors, right? Because there's very small margins in professional services and billing services, right? So they built a low-code application, but did bring your own device, right? So it turns out their even older sales workforce had the access to those devices, and they built a very low-cost, but in the industry which never had access to digital information system, which not only was HR, but also employee communications and training, right? So all on the same platform. So find me on LinkedIn, give me your email address, I'll send you that case study. Not saying that you should build something low-code, but we'll talk about low-code and no-code in a moment. Other questions, please.
Stuck on the opportunity phase.
Yes.
Right. So
that's good, because that's what we're in.
Yeah.
Right?
So the opportunity for HR is to drive the self-service. Right. But if you look at the marketplace, it's a very confusing
So you said the opportunity of HR is what?
To drive self-service.
No.
Right.
No. That's like old HR. Sorry to interrupt and jump in. Right. The job of HR is to maximize the people potential in your enterprise.
No, I'm not saying.
Is just,
I'm saying from a HR tech perspective.
Sure.
Right. If you take the transactional aspect of the HR, which is a process, policy driven, that could be moving to a sales service, which the same activity need not be performed by an HR person. And this could be by sales service, employee manager, managers of managers, and so on forth. And when you look at the HR technology platforms available in the marketplace, it's a very confusing world, right? From a point of view that I'm asking, how should we deal with the gap in the functional capabilities? See, every company is trying to sell a solution, but there's a huge gap in terms of the functional capabilities, and you don't get all-in-one solutions. Right. For example, if you look for your company HR bot, right, you'd ideally need to focus on not confuse your employees, right from your candidate experience till the post-retirement program. But there are none such a product available in the marketplace.
What availability marketplace?
Availability of this. So you see, there are, for example, you want to do a VOE, voice of employee surveys on the employee engagement side, right? There are companies who are only focusing on that. Then on the transactional aspect, you have another bot.
But
on the candidate side, you have another bot, right? So you have multiple. So the employee is completely confused. You know. So how do you?
You raise a very important topic, an interesting topic, right? Which is characteristic for all of enterprise software, which is the perennial battle between the suites and the best of breed. Yeah, the best of breed are giving you very single, narrow functionality for. You mentioned onboarding, you can say recruiting, you can say performance management, right? Whereas the suites give you less deep but wider functionality, which has the benefit of you have a single login, you have a common UI, you have the data in one place, and that's the battle which has been going on in any software category. Yeah? It has turned down a lot in the HR space. There's a lot of startups being funded right now, so it might be going up, but large talent management vendors, right, look at the history of it. There's a merger happening between Cornerstone, SumTotal, and Zaba, right, 3 independent vendors coming together. Longer term, SuccessFactors got bought by SAP, Taleo got bought by Oracle. So the suites have gotten stronger in the last decade, right? I don't know what's going to be, but it's the very important decision from your side. If you want to break a suite. But I can only tell you in enterprise software history, in the long run, the suites have always won. And why do the suites always win? Is because you don't want to become a system integrator of different solutions. So if the suite gets enough depth, then you don't want to integrate another solution which costs you a separate agreement, might be in a different cloud, gets you in different privacy, gets you in different technology, means a fasten your seatbelt experience for your employees because they have a different UI, but it has to be good enough. The space with the biggest best practice entropy in HR is the most competitive space, which is, what's the most competitive space in HR? Here's a slide I used to use. If a bad CEO is there, when does he get fired? Usually 2-3 years, right? Big mistake, board got the wrong CEO, CEO gets fired, gets replaced. A bad head of sales, how much time does he have? 2-3 quarters, right? A recruiter, how many days or weeks does he have or she have? 2-3 weeks, right? If you don't bring talent in 2-3 weeks, you're not a helpful recruiting person, right? And this is why the boss of the recruiters thinks, I need to have a very competitive platform. So recruiting is like CRM on the sales side, where you say, I need to have the best platform. This is why you see this high entropy where heads of recruiting saying, if I don't have this platform, if I don't use this platform, I can bring in the talent. Right? So in the whole HR space, the most entropy, the most pressure on best of breed is in recruiting. I would say, not knowing the details in your enterprise, except for recruiting, the suites are good enough. There might be always exceptions, and we talk about the solution, how to fix that. Great question. All right, please.
Very, very real.
It's
our company, we have an LXP, we have
yes.
Degreed, and then we have 8.
Yes.
But connecting all of them, because ultimately what we want to drive is employee experience.
Right.
But the view that has been taken is in silos. So from a learning perspective, how can we drive employee experience from a recruitment perspective? Yeah. But when it comes to analytics, when it comes to actually giving the employee experience, which is end to end, I think that is where I'm not quite sure if there is, the companies which offer the full suite, they have that kind of capability, because the experience level then sort of, while it's integrated, it's a trade-off, essentially, right? So,
well, the experience is better in the suite. It should be better. There's good and bad suites, like with everything. the functional depth is not that much
Yes,
there, right?
yes.
But the last 2-3 years, or 4-5 years, have given the suites a lot of time to catch up, right? I give you one semi-official confidential number in the industry, right? Oracle has about 3,000 developers in HCM. Yeah, I need a lot of startups to come up to reach 3,000 developers. And pardon my background, I'm a product developer too. At the end of the day, it comes back how much can you code, right? To fix something, to make something better, to create that functionality. Yeah, so the suites are slowly but steady winning. There's a big break in the marketplace on the SAP side, as an example, as they're moving to the cloud. The same is happening on Workday as they're moving to the cloud. But take an example of the hot topic of the last 2-3 years, and probably for the next 2-3 years on skills, right? Only the large vendors can really get to that problem. Now, to your best of breed to suite dilemma, right? Look at the suites in the non-strategic area and try to replace so much, right? Because you look at your HR landscape, and it looks like you made good decisions over the last 10 years, but you know we made this decision for this, and then for this, and then for this, and now it's a mess, right? The alternative is, and let me quickly get to the ABCs here, and they go backwards, right? The ABCs, AI, big data, cloud. That's your homework. If you don't have a strategy, if your HR solution is not in the cloud, forget the rest we're talking about. Yep. The cloud has won as a platform in the pandemic because it allows you to have what you saw in the keynote yesterday, what's called elasticity. And for a very long time, technologists, I'm guilty as well, we talked about elasticity of being able to ramp up and down servers and network and storage, right? But the real value of the cloud is the commercial elasticity, right? And companies learned that the hard way during the pandemic when they were shut down or had to operate on a fraction of their people, right? So you want to have the commercial elasticity, you want to have your IT costs in general, important for HR IT, scale up and down as your business is scaling up and down. Your business is going well, you want to pay more for IT. Your business, for whatever reason, shut down, is not going well, is shrinking for whatever reason, you need to spend less for IT, right? That's what's so important, why you need to be in the cloud. And you need to ask your vendor if they're in the cloud. And then you need to ask your vendor, are you hosting your own cloud, like many HCM providers were doing in the past? You don't want to go to them necessarily, right? Because the problem for them is they have to pay for the servers, for the people, for the data center. So if demand for them slows down, they still have to foot the bill, even if they give you a discount. So it's going to hit their balance sheet. You want to be an HR suite vendor, HR technology, HR startup, which is sitting on other people's clouds, which is sitting on AWS, on Google Cloud, on Azure, right? Because they have other businesses. So if for whatever reason transactional HR software is going down because people can't work, they will make it up with people streaming on Netflix and working from home as an example, right? So they have a bigger base to scale that out, and you want to have that commercial elasticity. But the solution, let me get the sequence right. You have to reverse the order, right? It's ABC, AI, big data, cloud. But the sequence you really have to have, and I didn't write it here, you have to go to the cloud first, and you have to do big data capabilities. And then on top of that data, you can start with AI. And a lot of people are trying to do AI right now and doing AI on a very fractional little piece of data. It can never be as good as when you get all your data together. And now, long story to your answer. One of the most interesting solutions, if you cannot replace your mess with a suite, takes too long, is too expensive. What is very affordable is to build a big data lake where you push all that data into. Yeah? And you force all your vendors to put in the data lake, and that becomes your integration. Then, let me quickly finish, right? Then you build modern mobile, affordable, potentially browser-built, dynamic applications to give employees one application on top of that. So that's a very successful strategy in the last 2-3 years to get the answers to management, to get a better employee experience, and hide the integration issue on a data problem. Because the good news is all the solutions are modern enough that you have APIs to get the data there. You just have to strong-arm the vendors to say, I kick you out if you don't provide me the chance to get all your data in my data lake. Questions? Hands were going up.
That's a great point. That's the dilemma as well. So is it ideal for a company? So you have, let's say you have SuccessFactors, I said.
Yeah.
You have an ATS, different ATS because SuccessFactors has capabilities.
But wasn't that good? I know. Yeah.
Right. You have other tools as well, right? Multiple HR tools.
Yep.
And then you typically look at any analytic solution. Let's say you go with SF, SuccessFactors.
Yeah.
it has its limitation.
Right.
Now, in HR, you would not find people getting employed who understand the middle aspect, the big data.
Right.
In a way, you need to create a data like an enterprise architecture, and then the data lake. How would the data flow? And then you pretty much, know what problems to solve and how to make decisions better, right? So, and the companies are a little reluctant in doing these sort of investments
Yes.
required there, both from a perspective of resource as well as the technical capabilities. And obviously it has a huge opportunity in terms of to do the first time, right? And you can really do a whole lot of stuff there.
Yep.
But how do you? What is your view that how should a company fast track this and influence the leaders to do such investments and follow this order?
It comes
because
back.
the management expectation, let's say,
No, but
the management expectation
I
is
have the
always
answer.
to do AI.
Totally
first.
understand the problem, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, everybody wants to do AI and doesn't want to do the homework, right? If you do AI with fragmented, separate, siloed data, guess what, right? There's a big principle in analytics: garbage in, garbage out, right? So it comes back to you as business practitioners, as trusted technology partners, to explain this to management why you need to have a big data approach in HR. And you don't even need it in the long-term future if you don't have it now. That is homework you need to do today. Because if your management wants to talk about artificial intelligence or machine learning, which is more realistic, it all depends on your data. Yeah? And this is why it's a rule for you to take away. If you're doing analytics projects and people are saying, what are your questions? What data do you need? That's the wrong approach, right? Because that's when you're back here. Oh, where do I point it? That's when you're back here, where your technologist is finding the best solution, right? And the old answer to that was the data warehouse, right? That was the best technology we had before there was big data capability to get structured, fast answers. But the data warehouse is like a concrete steel building. Yeah, if it's built, it's beautiful. If you want to change it, you need a sledgehammer, right? So a substantial change to the data warehouse would take 2-3 months, right? Minor 2-3 weeks. If you're lucky, 2-3 days. Way too slow for today's business, right? Remember, 30 seconds to query a Hadoop cluster, right? Very long if you have a pre-built report. Everybody says 30 seconds is too long. But for an unstructured question, 30 seconds is nothing if you compare it to 2-3 days in the lucky case, 2-3 months in the worst case to change your data warehouse. Now, beware of someone who's very successful right now, a company called Snowflake, right? They put the data warehouse in the cloud. Very, very successful, right? Because you use a common concept of the data warehouse, you put it in the cloud, you put a new engine on something old. It's not the solution because it will not have all the data, right? So don't get fooled by saying Snowflake is your solution to big data, just as a common mistake happened in the last 2 years. Okay, please.
Diverse and cross-functional skills to be able to deliver on that. So, so what we have done is that we have formed cross-functional agile teams with data scientists, solution architects, HR SMEs are one sort of group of people, but they're not the only ones in the decision making. And then looking at change management experts, because it's also about then rolling it out at a very large scale in a company like Ericsson, which is like 100,000 people across the globe. So I guess that learning has been immense, but let's see how it pans out, because it's not easy, is what I would say, still, because when you have to deploy at scale, then it's also the matter of culture that you're trying to impact, the kind of roles that leader will have to play, because a lot will go back to employees. They will be the CEOs of their own careers, let's say if you deploy a talent marketplace, for example. So I guess it's an interesting space, but I don't know the right or wrong answers, but it'll be a good, we have to be nimble and agile is all that I can say, and also look at very innovative ways in which we structure ourselves as HR function, and also the kind of capabilities that rest within our function to be able to do justice to the employee experience, which is more end-to-end.
Yep. And provide the automation for the next generation of HR automation. which HR people spend way too little time to think about. Because lots of it is reactionary, and lots of it is like, oh, it's just HR. The company doesn't think it's necessarily strategic, unfortunately, right? Despite people in most industries being the biggest expense. Yeah, but you said the very important thing. It's all about change management. Yeah, you can do as much technology as you want. You have to bring your people along. Right? You have to be in a situation where you listen to your people that they need a certain technology innovation to do their job. Yeah. This is why it's so important that you figure out what does the second and third level of management need in your company. And because there's way too much focus on the end user employee experience, which by all means is important. But if you want to move, and sorry, my English here, you want to move the herd, if you want to move the needle in enterprise, you have to enable the people who run teams of 7, 12 people and their managers. Because those are the people who get fired if they don't deliver the results. And we said change management is so important. Right? They will flock, automatically select, they will pay with their own credit card on something which allows them to deliver on their results, including their people, which they're the first person to be with, right? But what's the number one reason people leave? Manager, right? Manager, right? It's related to career and so on. My manager doesn't support me, doesn't grow, right? No, absolutely, right? So if you help a manager to spend more time on people issues, if you give them the tools to spend more time on people issues, not, oh, another form, another compliance, another COVID thing, right? Because HR, to be critical of ourselves, we love to layer more bureaucracy on people. And the people most hit are the second and third level managers. Yeah? And nobody's saying, oh, pick on Sachin, my colleague. Sachin, you have 3 more forms to fill out per week. We're going to take 5% off of your business objectives because you're so busy with that. No, that doesn't happen, right? He still has to do his numbers, right? But he has to fill out 3 more forms. How is it going to help him? How is it going to make him a better manager? Right? And that kind of thinking is what has to change because it's structurally wrong in the company. And you can look at your colleagues in finance, right? The 2 head office overhead functions to run the company, HR and finance. They do the same thing. They have the same potential virus, right? But they do less of that. Yeah. So look at how much they put as things important to that. And if they do too much of that, you're the advocate of the people in your company, right? You're saying we cannot have another finance form to fill out, another bureaucratic setup there, because it's breaking the time for managers to lead their teams and to achieve their business results. Okay. We have about, is this timer 3 minutes correct, or do we have extra time? No, we have time. Okay, perfect. 20 minutes. No, great questions, excellent. Please. Excellent.
So, you're talking about technologies, right?
Yeah.
And So, the first question would be, so, like the recent practice that has been introduced after the pandemic was remote first organizations, right? Where people have this opportunity to work from any part of the globe, right? They need not come to the office physically and do the work. Now, if let's say an HR is taking an onboarding remotely, right? When I take onboarding face to face, I get to know, the new hires who are disengaged, or let's say they're not very connected, or they're not very, they're not paying attention to what is being explained to them. And also, to the employees who are hired remotely, and, you do not understand whether they're engaged or not. So this is a drawback of the technology, right? If we are hiring someone remotely, we do not get to know how engaged that employee is, right? And that disconnect usually happens. So that is one issue that I face, that introducing too much of technologies might lead to disengagement, right? And the second question is, now we are talking about automations, HR automations. So HR automations, I think, may lead to, reducing the manpower, right? Where we used to have 10 employees or 10, HRs in a team, they'll get slashed down to, let's say, 5 employees. So how to deal with that situation?
Okay, so 2 questions. Remind me of the second one if I forget it, talking about the first one, because you mentioned one of the red herrings, which drive me crazy in the HR industry, which is there's always a topic of the 2-3 years, right? Engagement is one which is luckily ebbing down from my personal perspective, because when you lead people, no matter if it's an enterprise, if it's in a sports team, if it's in a military situation, you lead people, and that means you have to motivate people. Yeah? So engagement, I don't know what engagement really is. I need, as a leader, find a way to motivate people which are entrusted to me to achieve a certain result. And I need to find out what are the barriers to their motivation and how can I motivate them to help me. And if I cannot motivate them, maybe I'm not a good leader or I don't have the tools to motivate them. That's where the HR conversation starts. Do we have the tools to help leaders be successful? This is why I'm so adamant on the first and second level managers to help you move the needle in the company. Support them and good things will happen. Yeah? But technology is an enabler. Right? If you wouldn't think about the good things which have happened with remote work, which opened up talent pools, right? Talent would be local to Delhi, maybe local to Gurgaon, right? You couldn't relocate someone from Mumbai, and now you're in the same time zone, and people are working remote anyway, right? So I think that's a good thing, and a big driver to what is called the Great Resignation, which I call the Great Reassessment, because people can reassess what they want to do, right? But humans are extremely adaptable. Right? We're very, very good to work in totally different situations, right? Managers have to find a way how to deal with the problem that you said, that people start in the pandemic and leave in the pandemic and they've never set foot into an office, they've never met a colleague in real life. It has been always on virtual meetings, right? You have to find a way to solve that. The question for you is, what have you done as a people leader function in your enterprise to help managers to solve that problem? Yeah?
Of Will Smith. I don't recall the name of the movie, where
he has made too many. So that's the problem.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you what the movie was about.
Yeah.
There was not a single human left.
Yeah.
Right, and he was the only person surviving in that particular.
Yeah, he's the only person living in New York. Yeah, I know the movie. Yeah. I'm a legend. Yeah.
I'm the legend, and he talks to mannequins and robots, and he doesn't have anyone to speak to, right? And that's how finally the movie ends. That there's a breakdown, emotional breakdown, because he's not able to connect with anyone.
Right.
So that human touch was missing, right?
Yeah.
So you need that human touch, irrespective of the fact you're working from Mumbai or let's say, from some other part of the world or India, that doesn't matter. That human touch has to be there.
Right.
Ultimately, we are humans, irrespective of the fact, how adaptable we are.
Yep.
We do need someone to vent out our emotions, right? Or to be, or our managers, for a matter of fact, we want someone we can actually be a punching bag for us, right? So that doesn't happen when an employee works remotely. Right. Because in my organization, we are a remote-first organization. We were actually a remote-first organization before the pandemic.
Okay.
And yes,
so you should be masters of it. You should be doing. You should be standing here and say, "This is how we did this in 2015, 16,
would
17."
surely be doing that from next time onwards. So we are hiring employees from all across the globe, right?
Yeah.
But then the employees who are working in the physical office within the team and employees who are working remotely, that disconnect is absolutely there.
Right.
And I don't think that technology will be able to, bridge that gap.
Yep. I agree with that. Technology is a huge problem. Perfect, thank you. I just was looking on my phone to give you a more up-to-date movie for that, which is called Kimi. And it's about a lady who works in the tech sector in lockdown mode. She finds a solution to the human touch, which I'm not going to mention here, we have a family program, but she has to get out of her shell to meet with people to solve a big work problem that she has. So it's called Kimi, K-I-M-I, it's on all the airlines, so if you want to watch a more up-to-date version with pandemic reflection, that's the movie to watch, and I know how Indians love movies, but this is a learning curve. Right? There's no question about it, right? It's hard to have people work remotely. And the solution before was backlash, right? Both Yahoo, Marissa Mayer as a CEO there, and IBM forced people to come back to the office with the secret benefit that they knew that people would not come back to the office and leave, right? So reduction in force by office policy, right? But the key fundamental thing which is happening in our society in general, right? We live on this principle as humans of unity of place and action. Right? If you wanted to learn, if the philosopher in Greece 3,000 years ago, he had time, he would call the kids, they would sit under a tree, and he would teach the kids something. Right? I'm sure the same stories are here in India. And we're losing this thing of unity, place, and action. Right? We're all here in this place in the leader, and you can listen, we learn from each other, hopefully learn a little bit from me. And we're getting rid of that because probably you're streaming it, or yesterday you're streaming it, right? And this is a new way for us to evolve from a know-how perspective, from a virtual caring perspective, and from a leadership perspective. And the question for you as HR professionals is, What can I do to help leaders to succeed in that and not have high attrition? Right? And how do they solve that? As technologists, how can I enable that better? Right? What technology is there? What startups are helping and picking that up? I personally am very disappointed that we have 2 years of a pandemic, Zoom, Teams, and so on, all doing well, and we still sit in squares. Yeah? Do something that's really interesting, which shows the way of human processing is, in Teams, there's a way to set people up in a different way. There's a gallery mode. And people show significantly less meeting fatigue if you put people, attendees, into seats like in a gallery in an auditorium. And the ironic thing, I think, is most of us, including myself, I've not presented to people in auditorium. So that's not a familiar view, right? I would love to, for my next Teams call, to put people on tables. That's something my brain knows how to process this, right? And I can look in the room. But putting them in auditorium reduces the stress of having an online meeting versus having these, whatever, squares, which everybody has ended up with. So there's not enough innovation from these vendors to really help people. So it has to be outside of that, how to do that. And how you check check-ins. And it's easy to a certain point because you sit on top of the basic attrition data and the basic performance data. What are good managers, leaders doing in a difficult situation like a pandemic? Right? Who are the ones who need help? Who are the ones who are struggling? How do you connect people, leaders who are successful, the ones who are not successful? Right? I don't lose anything if I work in sales to tell the people in service how I'll run my team if I'm successful. You sit on the data. Right? You have to unearth, pick up the phone, you call those leaders who are doing well and figure out what best practices you want to bring in the company. You motivate them, can you do a presentation about what you learned in the pandemic? How do you get the conversation going? Who of you has a call for the first and second level people leaders for just experience exchange? Which used to be the management offsite, which didn't happen. Yeah? So there's a lot of burden, I think, on the people function because you're the people advocates for you guys to do and change. But back to the technology, think of the homework. Right? Don't be technophobic. I have the slide in the deck. I'm not going to go to it. It will burn a lot of time. Get more comfortable. I know it's traditionally there. It's the fault of IT. Some of you are HRIT in the room, right? HR is the only function which has the luxury to have an IT function, which was created historically in the past. There's no finance IT. There's no CRM IT. Yeah, there's maybe a system administrator or something, right? So that's both a bonus, a blessing, and a curse, right? It's a blessing because you have a trusted technologist who's hopefully helping you. It's a curse because you delegate all the technology questions, and you have to be technology savvy. Yeah, let me spend 1 minute on low-code, no-code, right? Because we know enterprise software is never going to be perfect. There's going to be an area where you have to do something yourself. Yeah, there's something where consultants can help you with low-code. I'd encourage you, look at low-code, no-code, because it enables you to own your automation destiny. You don't want someone in Silicon Valley determine how your company is going to be run with the right or wrong automation views, with the right or no knowledge about what's happening in India or not. Right? You will have to do a compromise. You take a lot from them, the ones you can use, but the ones where you see you need something specific for your enterprise because of your setup, because of the blue-collar example you mentioned at the beginning, because of needs of your leaders, because something they want to do, which sounds really reasonable. This is where low-code and no-code is very, very important. And I encourage you, no-code can be done by non-technical people. I encourage you to look at that. I forgot rid of the time, Esther. How are we doing? 2 minutes? Yeah?
I've got a question.
Please.
So, traditionally, from an HR standpoint, we know that we've been measuring stuff in a very, very conditioned way.
What?
In your opinion and in your experience, have you come across some creative metrics that have led to real business impact? Any organization?
That's a great question, right? We like the stability, the soothing of the weekly, daily report on something, and then to do something with it. That is the big advantage of the big data side, right? And you saw the sentient enterprise part, because all of a sudden, you can ask any question you want, but if you don't have time, you have software asking the questions. You have software looking into the data and emerging those trends to you, right? So it's a turning around of the paradigm of you showing up, running a report, saying, oh my God, the world is on fire, and then you jump out of the system again, right? Take a screenshot or something and say, Esther, the world is on fire, look at this, and then you set up another Zoom call and it goes into different systems. So systems should alert you about something happening, right? It's a change from the operator model of us showing up to do software to software pulling us in when something happens, right? The predicament is that the software knows about the data, right? All your data, the more data, the better. The predicament is that you can store it cheap and you can run the compute because the compute is the fuel to artificial intelligence and machine learning. That means you have to move to the cloud, and that enables those processes. Great question, but it's the question of the past, yeah, what the metrics are. That's what the analytics would say. We have the better metrics than these guys. No, the metrics are not the solution. Humans are not going to sit in front of a screen to look at this. You have to tell them, hey, your attrition is up or down. Benchmark in your industry because you're compared with other people, because you're trading data in a neutralized way or fashion. That's how it should be happening. Yeah. Self-driving, autonomous software is what we need to spend more time on the human interaction in person or on Zoom. With that, we're out of time, Esther? Yeah?
Close?
Employee expectation, coherent experience.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Disorder. How do you think should be, the influencing aspect should be used, right from the boardroom to the CEO, CHRO,
Yeah, it's
the CFO, the CIO, CTO, right?
Right.
All of them are stakeholders.
Right.
And you need to influence, and then, you have to create a balance where the employee expectation is, and then you need to create a functional, coherent experience because the
Yep.
employee doesn't see it that way the way we look at HR
Right.
or the management looks at HR.
Yeah.
There's a huge gap.
The most powerful thing for change management is lead by experience, lead by example. If your management is using something, the rest of the company will use it. Yeah, if you're a CEO, if you're a board, if you as an HR person are showing those practices, whatever they are, leading by example is the most powerful thing for us. Because if you think back 100,000 years ago, when our ancestors left the jungle, we still don't know what, and humans developed, we learned by example. Yeah, there was no language. And you would see an older Homo sapiens doing it like this and figure out, that's something like this. And this is why I'm a strong believer in leading by example. If leaders show desirable behavior, adoption of technology, of best practice, how to do or not to do things, something flips in our brain, which is 100,000 years old. Yeah? And probably even older, because if you look at our closest relatives, the apes, the intelligent apes, they learn the same way. No language. Right? Leading by example is the most powerful thing to do change management, in my experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being
Holger.
so interactive.